Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports with our final mock draft Monday here on the channel. Of course, we are just days away from the 2022 NFL draft, and I am so excited, and I'm sure you all are as well. If you are, make sure to leave a like on today's video and also subscribe to the channel for more draft coverage throughout NFL draft weekend. We're going to be covering so much throughout this next week with the NFL draft and more to come with the NFL offseason and going into next season. So this is the place you want to be subscribed to. We're nearing 10,000 subs, and we'd love for you to be one of those in the Utility Sports crew, and also turn on the notification bell. And without further ado, we've got our NFL draft expert here on the channel, Austin Host. It's been a long process. How excited are you to be finally in NFL draft week?
I'm excited. I'm ready to get on to Jacksonville. Let's see what they do, because this is a big draft. And
with your Jacksonville Jaguars here, the first overall selection, it's been changing all year long, and it seems like you've landed on Travon Walker here out of Georgia in your final rendition of a 2022 NFL mock draft. Why did Travon Walker pick up so much steam, and how does he land number one overall here to Jacksonville?
You look at what he is physically, he's an absolute menace that way. Trent Baalke has compared him to Aldon Smith, which obviously ties him back to San Francisco when he was the general manager there. I don't think that the Jacksonville Jaguars are really thinking much outside of Travon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, and then maybe an Evan Neal. I don't think Kayvon Thibodeau is really on the radar anymore like he had previously been. Travon Walker, though, physically, I mean, he's an absolute workout warrior, which there's some cautionary tales with players like this rising late in these draft processes. But Travon Walker could be a very productive player at the next level. His upside isn't extremely high, but I think Jacksonville's kind of settled on the idea that they're going to bank on a ton of upside, and that's really what Travon Walker has to offer.
Remember, fans, an important aspect of what we do here at Utility Sports for these mock drafts is project what we think will happen. Last year, Austin started the draft 7 for 7. This year, I think he'll be very efficient again, but I do want to ask your thoughts here, Austin, as a Jaguars fan yourself. How would you grade this selection of Travon Walker at 1?
I wouldn't love this. I see this as a C-level pick if I were to have to grade it on draft night. The only reason it's not any lower than that is because he does offer some intriguing upside, which there is some value in that. I'm not wanting to take a player that's really peaked, and he hasn't peaked as a player. There's a lot of great football for him to be played. However, from what we've seen, at Georgia and stuff, he's just not worth the number 1 pick. So that's why he kind of gets that C grade.
Right. Value, of course, always plays into draft grades. And now as we move on to pick 2, we look at an interesting franchise here in the Detroit Lions who've really kind of remade themselves, and head coach Dan Campbell, an awesome coach, I think, moving forward. He's kind of starting to right some of the wrongs there in Detroit. Very competitive this year. And they get a really good member to the front 7 in Aiden Hutchinson. He goes from Ann Arbor to Detroit. How much do you like Aiden Hutchinson here, and why is this just the no-brainer for the Lions here in the final week of the NFL draft season?
He kind of fits the mantra of what the Detroit Lions are trying to embody: a tough player, a guy that has an extremely high motor. That is why it makes so much sense for him to land in Detroit. We have been consistently mocking him 1 or 2 for the entire season, basically. Once he started to pick up some big traction, the middle part of the year, all of a sudden we were starting to see him in that top 10, and then he has been a consistent staple in this top 2. Reason being, he was so productive, and the guy is very tough to block. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. The one thing is, he has some of the shortest arms of all edges in the entire class, which when you get to that next level, and a lot of these guys are physical specimens with really long arms at those key tackle spots, I think that is kind of where you have to be a little bit wary. But when you look at the product on the field, what he's able to do, his relentless motor, it would be tough for Detroit to pass up on a guy like this at this spot.
Yeah, from Hutch, we saw a consistent uptick in production from his sophomore to junior season, and then, of course, his junior to senior season, in which he really cemented himself as a top 5 pick. And in this final rendition, we have him going 2nd to the Detroit Lions. Moving on to 3rd, Houston Texans here, and I think this is one of the harder picks to kind of nail down because there's a lot of different ways the Texans can look. Austin, in your final rendition here, you opted for Ike Ekwonu from NC State. What specifically about him made him stand out to you as an option over Evan Neal, specifically at the tackle spot here?
I think he's a little bit more polished right now as a current offensive tackle. And you've been hearing a lot from the mock draft community and a lot of the scouts and GMs talking about him. He's a very polished product, a guy that's going to be ready day 1 to be a consistent, great starter. I think if you're looking at the Houston Texans, they need to really build up front. They feel comfortable with Davis Mills. They have a lot of assets from obviously the Deshaun Watson trade. So there's a lot to like about where they're heading. I think when you are kind of looking at this analytically, looking at where the Houston Texans currently stand, their offensive line is not good. They could get a franchise level guy, put him there, and help build out this offense for Davis Mills.
I like that a lot. I think Davis Mills is going to be ready for a big jump into his sophomore season. Of course, he's still got to go out and do it, but they brought back Cooks on an extension. They have Laramie Tunsil and Ike Ekwonu. Those are two elite tackles to have on your offensive line moving forward. Moving forward into pick 4 now, we have edge Kayvon Thibodeaux going to the New York Jets. And I know there's a lot of questions. Some people even see him maybe going out of the top 10, which I think both of us look at as ridiculous. Why is Kayvon Thibodeaux not only worthy of a top 5 selection, but such a perfect fit here for the New York Jets, who really value that defensive line?
Yeah, and you look at what Robert Saleh was able to put together in San Francisco, and when his defenses were at their best, they had great edge play. Kayvon Thibodeaux can really add to that here. Obviously, they're getting Karlaftis back. Kayvon Thibodeaux is a big-time player, a guy with a really high ceiling. There has been a little bit of character concerns for him. However, I think you can kind of get past that, as this guy's going to be an absolute baller on the field. He's a big-time defensive lineman, and a guy that honestly you could see definitely being a 12 to like 14 sack guy for most of his career. That's the kind of upside he brings. He's also terrific against the run, which is huge for the New York Jets. They got to be able to stop the run. I'd love this overall. I think some Jets fans won't absolutely love this pick, but when you look at it from a talent standpoint and how it could be from a scheme fit standpoint, it makes all the sense in the world.
Jets fans, get used to seeing talented Thibodeaux on some New York Jets magazines and newspapers, because I think he's going to have a really nice career with the Jets. Moving forward into pick 5, staying in New York, we've got the Giants here selecting tackle Evan Neal out of Alabama. So we had Ike Ekwonu go 3rd, and now Evan Neal goes 5th. And I think the tackles are really probably one of the more volatile positions in this year's draft, specifically near the top, because like you said, the Jaguars could consider one at pick 1. You could also look at, teams like Houston and the Giants, and maybe even the Jets at 4. So you landed here on Ekwonu at 3, Evan Neal at 5. Break down your reasoning with how this all played out.
Yeah, look at Evan Neal, and I think his upside of all the offensive linemen is the highest in the class. He's 6'7", and he's super athletic. A guy that could be a great pass blocker at that next level. He's physically able to take on some of these big, talented edges that the league has. But Evan Neal and the New York Giants is a perfect blend. They already have Andrew Thomas. Now you go ahead and add a guy like Evan Neal, and this could be one of the better offensive lines in the NFL if they continue to build it like how they are. And I think when you're looking at Brian Daboll's offenses, you got to have good, consistent offensive line play. And really, that's how far you got to go to really make Daniel Jones succeed. So this would be a massive, massive, massive pickup for them. And they also have pick 7 to play with.
Yeah, I love this here for the Giants. Really improved that offensive line, and they still have 7 to work with, like you mentioned. Pick 6, we got the Carolina Panthers, and I feel like this is just the give me selection. Now, we've heard some other thoughts around where maybe they trade down and still try and take Kenny Pickett, or maybe they look at a tackle here. Top 2 tackles now off the board. If there's not a trade down option here for Carolina, does this become the obvious pick?
I think so. I think Kenny Pickett to Carolina feels like it's almost a done deal. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, hold on, there's a lot that can happen. Well, I think Kenny Pickett makes the most sense for him. I look at it from the standpoint of they're trying to be competitive right away. Maybe this is the guy that day one is probably the most pro ready when it comes to stepping on the field week 1, which is what Carolina is going to be asking him to potentially do, considering, their current quarterback situation. Kenny Pickett is one of those late bloomers, which is once again very scary at that QB position to have a guy suddenly pop off in his final season of college football. But to me, Matt Rule is going to have to try to save his job, and a quarterback might be the route that they take.
The interesting thing here, of course, Kenny Pickett only about a year younger than Sam Darnold, who they traded for from the New York Jets last season. Austin, let's put yourself into the shoes of head coach Matt Rule. Week 1, if you draft Kenny Pickett here at 6, is he the starter, or are you rolling with Darnold?
I think that Matt Rule's going to go ahead and go with Kenny Pickett. I think he's going to just be impressed with what he's able to do in camp. Whether it's necessarily warranted, I don't know. I mean, maybe Sam Darnold might be the better starting quarterback week 1. However, it's always tough to evaluate these rookie quarterbacks. I mean, even some of the best prospects last year that we had seen, guys like Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, a lot of these rookie quarterbacks had struggled throughout their rookie campaigns. I don't think Kenny Pickett would be really any different.
Yeah, we'll have to monitor Carolina. Of course, they don't have selections in round 2 or 3 either because of some trades. So this pick is highly important for them, and we'll see if Kenny Pickett can really reshape this franchise. Moving into pick 7 now, we've got the New York Giants here with safety Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame. So the Giants here clearly going best player available, seemingly in both cases, where you go with Evan Neal at 5, Kyle Hamilton at 7. How special of a prospect is this kid? I know there's a little bit more of a divide on him than there was a few months ago.
Yeah, I mean, it all really came down to his testing numbers, and people are going to freak out. But when you watch the film, this guy's the best player on the field in almost every single game that he plays in. His ranginess, his ability to play in the box, his overall instincts in coverage, it's the total package. For a guy like Kyle Hamilton to be here at number 7 is extremely awesome for the Giants. Obviously, picking up Neal and Kyle Hamilton, you're adding two great players in this draft, and this is a great start to kind of reshaping this franchise, rebuilding an identity. And Kyle Hamilton is a lockdown. He's that type of player that could be a captain on a defense. Obviously, at Notre Dame, we had seen it. I love this pick for the Giants. I think they got to stay the path, and hopefully Brian Daboll can turn this thing around.
The Fighting Irish in recent years have shown ability to produce safeties as well. You look at how good Harrison Smith's been in the NFL, and I think there's a chance here where Kyle Hamilton could maybe even be better, which is scary, and Giants fans should be really, really happy about this first-round mock draft for their team. Moving into pick 8, we've got Atlanta and another team here that I think should be really, really happy for their fan base. Looking at quarterback Malik Willis here, he's my QB1 in this year's class. I'm not sure exactly where you have him, Austin. I'm interested to hear, but I think Malik Willis for Atlanta, definitely an intriguing grab, even though they brought in Marcus Mariota. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, Marcus Mariota is one of those guys that can be a stopgap quarterback, could be the total bridge. Malik Willis might not be ready to play week 1, but at the same time, you have to be able to take some risk, and if you're the Atlanta Falcons, you definitely need to do that. With no clear quarterback option for the future on your roster currently, they have to go ahead and make that kind of move. I don't think Mariota is going to be the answer long term. I really don't believe that. However, Malik Willis has that upside to be a crazy quarterback at the NFL level. We look at what Lamar Jackson was able to do for the Baltimore Ravens. Malik Willis is not as talented as Lamar. However, he is a terrific quarterback prospect, great with his legs. He's got a cannon for an arm. Obviously, the accuracy's got to come along, but that was also the same case for guys like Josh Allen, Justin Herbert at times as well at Oregon had struggled with some accuracy issues. So Malik Willis has that high upside, and you got to take risk in this league for sure, and that's what they have to do here.
Right, definitely a risk here, but Atlanta fans, if you're trying to sell yourself on this pick, if it happens on draft night, you have to look at the reward side of things. In a redraft 5 years from now, it's very possible we're talking about Malik Willis being the first player off the board. So that upside's there. We'll see if he can cash in on that in Atlanta. And I think Arthur Smith's a really great head coach for him to be playing under and learning under early in his career. Pick 9 now. We go on to Seattle, and we have quarterback Sam Howell landing with the Seattle Seahawks. Very interesting right now. Obviously, Baker Mayfield is a trade candidate. Maybe this could come in on draft night and really shake things up. But the way you're looking at it here, if there's not a trade for Baker, Sam Howell's in the mix. Why for Seattle?
I think the Seattle Seahawks are going to feel a little bit of pressure after, consistently being a really, really great franchise ever since Russell Wilson has been drafted. There's a lot of pressure. Pete Carroll is getting up there in age. I don't know how many years he's still going to continue to coach. This team is really going through a transition. I don't know how much they believe in Drew Lock as a quarterback. So there's a lot to be decided with this franchise yet at that QB spot. I think that they're going to feel some pressure and they might have to go quarterback, or maybe they wait till later on in the draft. But at the end of the day, they could really get their choice of a Sam Howell or Matt Corral or whoever else it may be, maybe Desmond Ridder. But I think Sam Howell kind of fits the bill a little bit for what they're looking for in that style of offense. He's definitely another guy that's underrated with his legs, had the second most rushing yards in college football of all quarterbacks, which is just crazy to think that a guy like Sam Howell could do that. Obviously, Malik Willis is a more dynamic runner, but Sam Howell has been able to kind of salvage his draft stock a little bit, and he very well could go as high as number 9. Do I think it's necessarily warranted? No. However, we're just trying to project on where these guys could go and what could be real fits.
Right. And Seahawks fans, you might be saying, whoa, Pete Carroll said he really liked Drew Lock when he came out of the draft. Yes, he did say that. But again, what's he supposed to say when he has a question about the quarterback he just acquired in a trade? He's not Doc Rivers. He's not going to go slam his players. So realistically, I still think quarterback's on the table as well for Seattle. And I think Howell, pretty solid player, someone who we looked at as maybe a top 3 pick in this year's draft early on. Didn't have the season he was hoping to at UNC, but still an intriguing prospect nonetheless. Moving into 10, my New York Jets back on the board here. And after going with Kayvon Thibodeau, they continue to focus this defense, which ranked 32nd in the NFL last year. And they go ahead and draft cornerback Ahmad Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati, a player I really, really love. Did not give up a touchdown his entire career for the Bearcats. What's your thoughts on Ahmad Gardner? How special of a talent is he as the first cornerback off the board?
There's two lockdown corners in this draft, Ahmad Gardner and Derek Stingley. I think the New York Jets are going to have their choice. They're going to take the guy that, a little less concerns overall. Ahmad Gardner, he's got the size, he's got the tape, he has everything that you want in a corner prospect, which is crazy because it's such a premier position, but he ends up falling to number 10. A lot of that has to do with needs and other things in this draft. But Ahmad Gardner here is kind of that best case scenario for the New York Jets, considering they were able to get Thibodeau at 4 and then, go around at number 10 and get, Ahmad Gardner, which very well could be 2 top 5 players from this class when it's all said and done. So you have to love the upside for the New York Jets, and they look like geniuses right now with that Jamal Adams trade.
Yeah, I think so as well. This Ahmad Gardner landing spot just makes a ton of sense. This team just needs better cornerback play. I know that they like some of the young guys they've got, but Ahmad Gardner clearly would be the best cornerback on day one in that Jets room. And I think he's a really, really smart, intelligent player with, again, that great length, like you said. Special prospect, getting him at 10. I really, really love that. Moving into 11, Washington Commanders here now. And you have them going with a wide receiver here with Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State. Of course, there's been a lot of rumblings in the league about wide receiver trades. A.J. Brown, not super happy right now in Tennessee. Look at Terry McLaurin, obviously in Washington here. Again, not super happy. Those two share an agent, and then Deebo Samuel as well has the same agent as those two. Does that agent rumbling kind of play into the Garrett Wilson selection here?
Yeah, I think so, because we're seeing that teams are not able to afford some of these wide receiver contracts. They're getting squeezed for money. Washington very well could be in that situation too. And if that's the case, if Terry McLaurin truly wants out, then Garrett Wilson's got to be the pick, in my opinion. When you have Carson Wentz, you kind of push your chips in a little bit on him. You want to make sure he could succeed. Now, let's just say Terry McLaurin ends up getting a deal done. That's fine. But then all of a sudden you have Garrett Wilson and Terry McLaurin in this offense, Curtis Samuel as well. That would be absolutely terrifying for a lot of teams in that division trying to cover those 3 guys.
Yeah, that trio is absolutely terrifying, and it does protect you, again, like you said. If McLaurin does ultimately demand a trade out of Washington, that'll be a situation to monitor, especially on draft night, as there's probably going to be a pretty decent amount of movement from some of these teams. Moving into 12, Minnesota Vikings here, and this is the other cornerback you named as a potential shutdown guy in the NFL, and that's cornerback Derek Stingley out of LSU. He's going to be staying in the purple and gold, teaming up with another former LSU legend in Patrick Peterson. Why does this make sense for the Vikings to go out and draft a corner like Stingley?
Yeah, Stingley is one of those high upside corners, and if you put everything together, he has all the makings to be an elite corner at that next level. A lot of concerns with the injuries and also the inconsistencies that you potentially saw with him. However, when you look at his ball skills, his hip, fluidity, the ability to just make big plays, that is exactly what this guy brings to the table. It's what the Minnesota Vikings need to do, is get better on defense. They definitely had a lot of struggles in that secondary last year. Guys like Rashad Breeland were not cutting it, but you put him, Derek Stingley, in this lineup instead, you're just drastically better, regardless of how many games he plays. This is one of those players that you can look at and say this could be an absolute home run A+ level pick at number 12.
Yeah, I think so as well. You look at a player who had one of the best freshman seasons of all time at the cornerback position in college. And then the last 2 years, COVID in there, and then you also had to deal with some injuries. The inconsistencies were present. That's why he goes up to the top 10. But at 12, this could be a massive steal for the Minnesota Vikings. Pick 13, we have another Ohio State wide receiver going off the board, and this time it's wide receiver Chris Olave, which creates a really dynamic duo there in Houston for Davis Mills to work with. Obviously, Brandon Cooks gets his extension. Chris Olave comes into the fold. You added a tackle already in Ike Ekwonu. This Texans offense starts to look pretty scary pretty quickly. How would you feel about the Texans here after these day one selections of Ekwonu and Olave?
2 massive upgrades at 2 big positions, and you look at the Houston Texans, and obviously there's been a lot of doubt considering they've got one of the oldest rosters in the league. However, they had the assets now to move, shake, and make this a really competitive team in a couple of seasons. And you look at it, this is a great start. 2 franchise building block level players would be absolutely huge. Chris Olave's gained a ton of traction, especially since that combine had happened, and he ran way faster than people were expecting. So obviously you look at this, he could be a big time vertical threat and a guy that just has a good feel how to get open. That's the big thing here for the Houston Texans. Continue to upgrade that offense, give Davis Mills a lot of opportunities to become that franchise quarterback and really secure his spot.
Right, definite touchdown machine. You add him into the fold, and Houston, I think, becomes pretty intriguing rather quickly into this rebuild. Moving on to 14 now, we've got the Baltimore Ravens, and this has been one of your favorite selections to mock throughout this process, specifically as of late here with edge Jermaine Johnson from Florida State. He's been around, of course, in a bunch of different colleges. Break down why you think this is such a good landing spot here for Baltimore.
Yeah, it's crazy. His pathway from going to Georgia to landing at JUCO to finally finding a home in Florida State where he was absolutely able to thrive at his final season with the Seminoles. And I kind of look at this team, and obviously they want to continue to get better on defense. They're going to get healthier, but they got to continue to put pressure on teams like Cincinnati, who obviously won the division last year, went to the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow is going to be under a lot of duress once this team's healthy. The cornerback room is going to be better. Obviously, they're going to have their starters back finally. So the Baltimore Ravens are definitely going up from here for sure. But I love Jermaine Johnson. I love the fit. I think it's going to be a seamless transition, plugging him into this lineup. And once again, this could be another double-digit sack guy for the rest of his career.
Really good addition here for Baltimore. They also definitely know how to develop these players that they draft on day one. So I think Jermaine Johnson would be slated to have a great career for the Ravens. Now we move into the Philadelphia Eagles at pick 15, where we're looking at wide receiver Treylon Burks here, who's built a little bit more like a running back with his body frame. Very tough to bring down. Obviously, that's one of the biggest traits for him that you really like. Why is he such a good fit here with the Eagles?
I like this for the Philadelphia Eagles because they're getting a physical wide receiver, which they just are lacking on this roster. Arcega-Whiteside was supposed to be that, just did not pan out. They're moving him to tight end. Devontae Smith, Jalen Reagor are two guys that, they're very, very Devontae Smith is a super talented receiver and is going to continue to get better. Jalen Reagor, they're really trying to figure out a true role for him. But Treylon Burks is that red zone threat, something they desperately need. Him and Dallas Goedert in the red zone are going to be a nice duo, consistently racking up 10 touchdowns, I think, is very realistic for these guys. And also Treylon Burks with the ball in his hands is very tough to bring down. A guy that's thick, he's got a nice stiff arm. There's so much to love about what he can bring at that next level. People were scared of the testing numbers, but at the end of the day, you have to trust the eyes. You got to trust the film. I think that's why it's worthy of him going at number 15.
And now sponsored by Manscaped, here comes our commissioner.
With the first pick in the NFL draft, Ball Saxonville has decided to pick Manscaped. Manscaped, the leaders of below the waist grooming, have sponsored us to make sure that you don't get booed out of the bedroom like Roger Goodell. Support us and head to manscaped.com and use the code utility20 at checkout for 20% off plus free shipping. So Sheldon, what do you think about these products?
Yeah, luckily we've been sent products here from Manscaped, and I really, really do love what they've sent us. As you can see on the screen, the Performance Package 4.0, very, very nice. Comes with a ton of goodies, including ball toner, crop reviver, the actual weed whacker, and also the Lawnmower 4.0. Both really great products, both water resistant as well, which is really, really nice to use. And they really just help. They come with some nice guards, helps from any nicks or damage that you don't want to have to deal with. And for a person like me, I can't fix what's going on up here, so I have to take care of what's going on down there. Definitely really, really nice and helpful products, and I really do recommend you go check them out. Again, head to manscaped.com, use code utility20, treat yourself today for the NFL draft. You want to make sure you're looking nice, specifically for any loved ones that you want to be looking good for. So again, use Manscaped, your balls will thank you. And now we move on to pick 16 here for the New Orleans Saints. And we're looking at a cornerback, and this player will definitely help New Orleans. Andrew Booth Jr. out of Clemson. He's a big riser from the start of the season to where he's at now. You see him as a top half of the first round type of guy here at 16 to New Orleans. Break down this selection. Why does this make sense for the Saints?
Yeah, definitely need a corner in this room. Obviously, they have Marshawn Lattimore, but I think Andrew Booth Jr. has been circled on the Saints their board for quite some time. They brought him in for a lot of pre-draft meetings. They've been really excited about this guy, the physicality that he brings, good size, good length. There's so much to love about him potentially going to New Orleans. I think when you look at the Saints, they want to continue to get better in that secondary. Andrew Booth Jr. goes a long way in trying to address that spot. There's a lot of changes in New Orleans this year. I think Dennis Allen would be super happy about this selection.
I definitely think it helps this defense. The Saints are kind of in a little bit of a transition period. We'll see if they can get everything back up to par with where they were under the Sean Payton regime. It's going to be tough shoes to fill, but I think this is a really good pick to start it off with. Then sliding into 17, we've got the Los Angeles Chargers here now, and we're looking at linebacker Devin Lloyd, which I think linebacker probably one of the biggest holes that this team had. Of course, a few years ago, they took a first-round pick on Kenneth Murray. I just don't think it's really played out the way that many had expected it to. So what does Devin Lloyd do differently here that really embodies and emboldens this Chargers defense under Brandon Staley?
Yeah, Devin Lloyd is much better in coverage than Kenneth Murray was coming out of Oklahoma. And I think that's the big difference here. He's also terrific against the run, great instincts, but the coverage is really the big deciding factor. Once again, this guy can definitely move his hips. He can cover tight ends. And this is one of those prospects that is definitely going to help in this, pass-happy division. So you got to make sure you're covered with that. Devin Lloyd's one of those complete prospects in the draft. Obviously, plays that linebacker position, and that's exactly what the Chargers are looking for heading into the draft. We thought a lot about the interior defensive line, but with some of the free agent signings, I just thought it was better for them to go at that linebacker spot. Probably one of the biggest holes on this team.
Yeah, a versatile linebacker here who's going to do a lot of different things for you. And having a guy in the middle like Lloyd, I think really does help everything else you've got on this roster. They're one of the most improved teams this offseason when you look at the fact that they brought in J.C. Jackson, also were able to retain Mike Williams, brought in a bunch of interior defensive line help to go along with it. And of course, Khalil Mack is a Charger as well. So this team is really scary. You add a really great player into the middle, and I think the Chargers are going to be really tough to deal with in that AFC West. And then 18, Eagles on the board again here. And you go with a cornerback on one that I think a lot of GMs, executives, and scouts are really going to like. Maybe not a player built off of potential as much, but someone who I think is just really, really good right now. And that's Trent McDuffie out of Washington. Why does this Washington Husky deserve to be in the top 18 of this year's draft?
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the best corners in the entire nation in terms of yards given up in the whole last season. And a lot of people are not super high on his upside. However, sometimes let's not overthink it. Let's not reinvent the wheel. What works. And with how great he was in coverage this year, I just see him, transitioning very well to that next level. Maybe he does not have the high-end traits and upside potentially. However, he's a first-round level player, a guy that can definitely help out a secondary. I think the Philadelphia Eagles would be very, very wise to take him. I even considered him at Minnesota at number 12. Trent McDuffie is one of those players that you have to expect is a good 10-year guy for sure at the next level. I think he's going to help out the Eagles tremendously.
A very high IQ corner. As reported earlier, even one scout said this about Trent McDuffie, that he could be the type of cornerback year one of his career that he's helping coach up the other corners. That's how good this kid could be. And I think coming into Philadelphia, you put him across from Slay, and you feel really, really good about your CBs 1 and 2 for the Eagles. Moving into 19 now, and at this spot, we have the New Orleans Saints yet again. Of course, that big trade with the Eagles really did set them up to have 2 selections in the first round. And this is a great value selection here. Charles Cross out of Mississippi State, high intriguing player here, really good pass protector. And the Saints lost Teron Armstead. Is that pick here completely correlated with the Armstead loss?
Oh, 100%. Losing Armstead is a big deal for the New Orleans Saints, in my opinion. And Charles Cross is going to be a nice transition at that spot, because you got to make sure that you are protected up front. If Jameis Winston is the quarterback to start next year, you want to make sure he's upright. Obviously, coming off of an injury is huge. And looking at what Charles Cross has been able to do at his career at Mississippi State, he's grown so much as a player from his sophomore campaign to now. It's a big deal. And you look at the New Orleans Saints, I think, you have to make sure that you're able to run the ball effectively as well. Charles Cross can help out in that. And obviously, Michael Thomas has got to get going. So let's really try to support this offense. And to me, Charles Cross is a big deal for them.
Losing a tackle like Teron Armstead, not easy to handle. But when you have Ryan Ramczyk and you're able to come back at 19 and draft Charles Cross, you're probably dealing with that loss about as well as you possibly can. So I think the Saints here do set themselves up in a pretty good position to stay competitive in that NFC South division. Then we move on to Pittsburgh here. And Matt Corral, a player who's been up the board, down the board, all over the board. You have him landing at 20 in our final mock draft here on the channel for the 2022 NFL Draft. Why does Matt Corral out of Ole Miss go here to Pittsburgh?
I think pre-injury, you were looking at him potentially being a top 15 pick. Now, I don't think Pittsburgh's going to be scared because, there's really no clear long-term quarterback. I mean, is Mitch Trubisky going to be that? Probably not. But once again, he can serve as that stopgap quarterback. Matt Corral, you can give him some time to really recover going into next year. Trubisky is going to be your starter. But I look at Matt Corral potentially could have been quarterback one, barring, if he hadn't gotten hurt, I definitely think he was in that conversation. Now, people have kind of forgotten about him, and all of a sudden he's sliding down a lot of people's boards. But Pittsburgh is a really, really smart organization. I don't think they're going to let this guy slide past 20.
Yeah, I think this is a good addition here for Pittsburgh. They badly need to find a quarterback moving forward. And I think Corral could probably get the job done at the NFL level. Then we move on to 21 here, and we land on the New England Patriots, and you have them go with a cornerback here in Kaiir Elam out of Florida, who earlier on in the process was a little bit higher, maybe didn't exactly translate the way that we thought he would, especially when it came to some of those physicals. But Kaiir Elam still an intriguing prospect here at 21. Break down why you think New England badly needs to find a corner.
I think Bill Belichick's history of drafting guys that have some of those, moldable traits, like the long arms, the guys that are pretty good athletes, I think that makes a lot of sense. And Kaiir Elam is one of those perfect Bill Belichick corners that's going to slot in very nicely. And they have to go ahead and address this. Losing J.C. Jackson is a big deal. It's going to be very, very tough for them to replace it. And I'm kind of looking at this roster and saying, I just don't know if they have enough to go into next year and try to win that division with the current corner room. And obviously you're keeping up with Buffalo. So you got to be able to, play, have some really, really good corners to help that out. Obviously Miami has gotten better at that wide receiver position, adding a Tyreek Hill. So at the same time here, you got to be ready for that transition. You can't just go with, having JC Jackson to not. You got to be able to kind of counter that.
Yeah, I think Kaiir Elam, a really good option here. We know how important and good cornerback play is in a Bill Belichick defensive system, and I think Kaiir Elam going to get the job done at the next level. 22, Green Bay Packers here, and you have them going with Jameson Williams, who maybe takes a little bit of a tumble because of that injury, but obviously the upside and talent is clear here. Stays in the first round at 22 to Green Bay, a team that is so wide receiver needy. Talk about Jameson Williams' fit with Aaron Rodgers.
Now, Jameson Williams is going to be so dangerous with Aaron Rodgers. His ability to take the ball to the house every single time he touches it is one of the reasons why, even with the injury, you want to go ahead and take this chance. Jameson Williams is probably a top 15 pick, maybe even top 10 pick if he stays healthy, because if he's able to run at that combine, go through the pro day stuff, I definitely see this being a different outcome for sure. I think he's that talented of a player. Green Bay is willing to take some risks on receivers, and they're going to continue to do it here with Jameson Williams. And looking at this team, you got to replace Devontae Adams. I think Jameson Williams is a nice addition to this team.
Definitely a really nice pickup. We know Sammy Watkins is going to have a nice week one, at least for the Green Bay Packers, but I think Jameson Williams, once he's active and healthy for this Packers team, he's going to be a high impact player in his own right. Moving on to 23, Arizona Cardinals now here. And with all the drama and controversy around Kyler Murray, their GM Steve Keim has really kind of shut that down, saying we're not trading him. Kyler Murray's gone on Twitter and also, reacted to that, saying he wants to win a Super Bowl in Arizona. And they go ahead and take Trevor Penning here out of UNI. Is this the type of pick that can help this team maybe advance further in the playoffs, have a little bit of a better regular season, specifically to end the year? And how important is the Trevor Penning to a team trying to win a Super Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those cornerstones on that offensive line. There's some people that love him, some people that really don't like him. And I kind of fall in between. I think he's a really good prospect, but I don't think he is a franchise changer necessarily. However, they got to get better up front. They have a decent offensive line. I think you can make some improvements, though. I was thinking about having Tyler Linderbaum go here. However, with Rodney Hudson currently in place, I felt a little more comfortable going to that tackle spot, and Trevor Penning could be a big addition to this offensive line.
Yeah, I love that for Arizona here. And as we move on to 24, we look at Tyler Linderbaum going to the Dallas Cowboys. So he didn't fall far from 23 down to 24 with the Cowboys. And obviously the Cowboys kind of in the process of reshaping and remaking their offensive line a little bit. Is Linderbaum just best player available here for Dallas?
Yeah, I mean, Dallas historically has done this in the first round. They don't really care necessarily about what the positional value is or any of that. I mean, they just go best player available. We saw when they did CeeDee Lamb, that worked out. I think Tyler Linderbaum is one of those players that could be a longtime Dallas Cowboy. He just feels like he would be. Some people have concerns about his arm length. and also just his total upside. But when you look at a player as talented as Tyler Linderbaum, it kind of reminds me of Creed Humphrey. And I think he's going to have, a similar impact on the Dallas offensive line.
Yeah, that's obviously high praise. Humphrey was really good this past season. You're looking at the Cowboys getting a really, really nice prospect at 24. Sometimes that's difficult to do, but Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys find one here in Linderbaum. 25, onto the Buffalo Bills. And you had talked about the Bills a little bit with that receiving core when we did the New England pick. And you see here at 25, the Bills say, okay, you draft a corner, we'll come back and draft a wideout. Drake London out of USC, a high volume guy on the outside. How impactful could he be for Buffalo as a complement to guys like Gabriel Davis and Stephon Diggs there in Buffalo?
Yeah, the big thing is getting a true red zone threat. Gabriel Davis, Stephon Diggs, a very nice 1-2 punch. However, you could just make this a really talented receiving group, make it very difficult, put a lot of pressure on teams in that division to have to cover players like Drake London, like Gabriel Davis, Stephon Diggs. I love this pick for the Buffalo Bills, has to do a lot with value, and that's why he goes here. I definitely thought about corner, thought about safety, but with Drake London still on the board, sometimes you just got to take the most talented player.
When you're talking about talent here, Drake London missed nearly half the season for USC this past year and still won Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year. That's the kind of talent that we're talking about. Highly productive when he was active and played, and I think Buffalo adds a really, really nice receiver into that grouping. Moving on to 26, the Tennessee Titans here now. And this is one that just feels really safe and consistent, I feel like, through the mock draft process here. And that's Zion Johnson out of Boston College. A really, really NFL-ready guard. What do you like about him?
I think when you look at the Tennessee Titans, they're going to be running the football. I think there's no secret to that. Keeping Ryan Tannehill upright is really important because when you look at his efficiency with being pressured versus not, I think it's critical that you keep him upright, and you want to start investing more in this offensive line. And obviously, Derrick Henry's career in his prime now, you want to make sure that you're able to run the football effectively. Zion Johnson brings that to the table. The Tennessee Titans, yes, it's not the flashiest pick. However, Zion Johnson could be a huge addition to this offensive line.
Yes, definitely helps improve that running game and just really shores everything up in front of Tannehill and Derrick Henry. 27, Tampa Bay Buccaneers now, and they go with the player who I think could be really impactful in year one of his NFL career. And of course, that's the massive mauler in Jordan Davis out of Georgia. Ran really well at the combine. Of course, everyone knows how big and strong he is. Why is this the perfect spot here in Tampa?
To me, I look at it from the lens of Jordan Davis just being so physically imposing, and you also have Vita Vea as well. So let's not forget that. Good luck running the football on them now, because it was bad with Ndamukong Suh and Vita Vea, but now it's Jordan Davis and Vita Vea. Going to be two of the strongest guys in the entire league along the same interior. That is going to be absolutely scary. There's a lot of different things you can do. You don't have to rely on him necessarily being a complete 3-down defensive lineman. You can give him breaks and really trust him, especially on that first and second down.
Right. The addition of Jordan Davis here gives you a very strong and impactful interior defensive line, and we already know how skilled and talented they are on the edge positions as well. Tampa Bay, their strength is that defensive line, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. And with Tom Brady back, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are looking to contend, and Jordan Davis is going to help you do that. 28, the Packers here again, and they're going to shore up their defensive line as well with an edge who I think has a really, really high floor in this class, and George Karlaftis out of Purdue. What really plays into that floor, and how impactful do you think he can be even starting year one?
Yeah, I mean, he's a powerful dude. I mean, he wins with power consistently. I wonder about his ability to win with his hands, which is something that you have to be able to do at that next level. I think he's going to get better, but he relied solely on that power because he was just able to outmass and outmuscle everybody in that Big Ten for the most part. And I look at the Green Bay Packers, this is a need. With Zadarius Smith out the door, you got to make sure that you have another impactful edge coming in. George Karlaftis can kind of fit the bill there. And obviously, they put themselves in a really good position to win the NFC North next year.
Right. 2 first-round picks this year. They go with Jameson Williams and George Karlaftis. And I think this team right back in business going into next season as probably the NFC North division winner. 29, we're looking at the Kansas City Chiefs here. And this is a pick I think that both of us have really started to fall in love with, specifically when I'm hearing you as our NFL draft expert break down why this makes sense, which is Dax Hill landing with the Kansas City Chiefs. Break down for Chiefs fans why this is a must.
If you think about Tyrann Mathieu and what he was able to do for that team for many, many years, I think Daxton Hill can have that same impact, can play in the slot, can play the high safety. This guy is so versatile. And I think that we kind of get lost in the mix with that because people are wondering, what is he really? It doesn't really matter, because when a guy makes plays like Daxton Hill does, you want to just take him, get him in your lineup. Sometimes it's like when you're running a company, you want to find good people and you make it fit and work later. Just try to find the guy that is really going to make an impact. That's exactly what Daxton Hill's going to do for this Kansas City defense.
Right. Now, a player like him really does empower their defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo, who likes to be really exotic, sends a lot of pressure. And having a player who you can play at safety who's really good in coverage just makes a lot of sense. Daxton Hill, very special player at 29 for Kansas City. And we'll stay with the Chiefs here at 30 with Jahan Dotson, who actually in the last 3 years of college football ranks second in yards after the catch. Throughout those 3 years, only behind Devontae Smith, which is crazy because Smith didn't play in college football last season, of course. But Jahan Dotson falls number 2 on that list out of Penn State. What do you love about this kid?
No, he does all the right things that a receiver does. Now, he's not going to blow the doors off athletically, but when you look at players that are able to make things happen after the catch, generally it tends to translate to that next level. You see it time and time again. That's why I'm excited about guys like Treylon Burks and Jahan Dotson. This is good for the Kansas City Chiefs. They have to address that wide receiver spot. I don't think they're going to go into the year without doing that in the draft. And I think one of these first round picks is a heavy wide receiver landing spot.
Yeah, Jahan Dotson, really, really good selection here for Kansas City. And if they walk away with Daxton Hill and Jahan Dotson, I feel like Kansas City got the job done on day 1 of draft night. Then we slide into pick 31 here in the Cincinnati Bengals. We have them going with a tight end here, Trey McBride out of Colorado State. Now, I know Bengals fans might be saying, whoa, we don't need a tight end here at 31. We would like to shore up some other spots. Why is Trey McBride just clearly number 1 tight end on your board, and why is he worthy of this selection?
Yeah, I know Jalen Weidermeyer was that big guy for a lot of the mock draft season that thought he could be the number 1, tight end in the class. However, Trey McBride burst on the scene at Colorado State. Super productive, high volume guy, good catch radius, can do stuff with the ball in his hands. He only scored 1 touchdown, so not a huge red zone threat. However, when you look at the Cincinnati Bengals losing CJ Uzomah, you saw the impact he had when he was in the lineup versus not. It was a big difference for this offense. And I think if you're rolling into next year with like a Drew Sample at tight end, I don't have the utmost confidence in that. So that's why Trey McBride makes a ton of sense here at 31.
Yeah, I like that a lot for Cincinnati. Get way better at the tight end spot compared to where they are currently with what's on their roster. And then we slide into 32. And we have the Detroit Lions here. And this 5th-year option is going to be important. Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati. I know some Lions fans really love Jared Goff. Some of them really hate him. Sell them on Desmond Ridder, though. Why is he worth this pick?
He's a dual threat quarterback, and he's won a lot at the collegiate level. This guy just has a good ability to make plays at the end of games. You can call him clutch. You can call him whatever you want. But, Jordan Palmer, who works with him closely, says this is one of the most talented quarterbacks he's worked with, in his time as the quote QB guru. A lot of people, are familiar with Jordan Palmer by now, but he loves what Desmond Ridder brings to the table. He's a true leader. He's a guy that's first in, last out. And there's so much to love about the Detroit Lions, potentially getting him here at 32, getting that 5th-year option, and potentially having a franchise quarterback. And he were able to get him with the last pick in the 1st round. That's the big difference why you take him now rather than in round 2.
Definitely a really good selection here for Detroit. You get that 5th-year option and a highly impactful quarterback who can help this team win games. Hopefully you guys did enjoy today's video. If you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Go to manscaped.com. Use code utility20 for 20% off. Also, in the description, we have our links to our Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Please go follow us on all 3 of those. It would be really, really awesome to have you guys watching us on our other socials as well. Of course, Twitter and TikTok, the ones we're most commonly on besides YouTube. So thanks again so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Check out our other videos. And until next time, we'll catch you in our next video.